In 48 hours, entire homeless encampments in Washington, D.C. could vanish. Trump says it's about safety. Critics say it's about control. The truth, that's where things get complicated. Welcome back to Trumpology AI, where facts meet predictions. Today, we're digging into Trump's newest and most aggressive policy yet, removing homeless populations from D.C., sending them far from the Capitol, deploying the National Guard, and boosting the FBI's presence downtown. Segment 1. Break down Trump's actual words or tweets, exact quotes, and compare them to the actual laws, constitutional limits, and historical precedents. And in Segment 2, who benefits most from this move? Politicians, interest groups, media figures, or even Trump himself? If you're tired of political noise and want data-driven clarity, hit like, subscribe, and tap that bell, because our AI's got more insight than most pundits on cable news. Gather all the latest info on Trump's DC takeover so you're fully up to date, and then I'll start asking my questions. Don't write anything yet. Just let me know when you're ready. Be clear, straightforward, totally unbiased. Call a spade, no spin, no fluff, no sugarcoating, no links, no headlines, no headers, and always give your own take on whatever I ask. Now I want you to break down Trump's actual words or tweets, exact quotes, and compare them to the actual laws and tell us who benefits most from this move. Politicians, interest groups, media figures, or even Trump himself. Analyze everything related to Trump in this case and tell me what you think. Is there anything that could actually land him in hot water or not? I want you to make an educated guess, based on everything you know. Be as detailed as possible, around 1,000 words, your thoughts, your analysis, your honest take, no headers. Short answer first. Trump's words are mostly political theater that lean on a thin, rarely used legal hook, Section 740 of the D.C. Home Rule Act, and on the president's unique control over the district's guard. And those words create lots of political upside for him now, lots of legal fights for others to pursue immediately, and only a small chance of immediate criminal exposure for him personally. Long version, plain and precise. He said blunt things. For example, he posted, "The homeless have to move out, immediately. We will give you places to stay, but far from the Capitol," and announced he was placing Washington police under federal control and dispatching National Guard troops. What the law actually says and what his words map to. He invoked Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act and issued an order delegating operational control of MPD for federal purposes. Section 740 does exist and does give the president the power to direct the mayor to provide metropolitan police services for federal purposes during special conditions of an emergency nature. And the executive order sets out monitoring and a 30-day ceiling absent congressional action. That is the narrow statutory lever he's using, where the words and the law mismatch. Dangerously often, Section 740 authorizes use of MPD for federal purposes, protecting federal property, ensuring the functioning of federal government, etc. Not a carte blanche, banish everyone you don't like from the city. The federal government can clear federal land or secure federal buildings. It does not have a lawful mechanism under Section 740 to expel D.C. residents en masse or ship unhoused people out of the district permanently. Courts and advocates are already pointing that out on troops and the Guard. D.C. is unique. The D.C. National Guard answers to the president and can be run without the governor approval hurdles states' guards have, and statutory GI operational quirks make the D.C. Guard a tool a president can use more readily for domestic missions. The posse comitatus constraints that normally limit active federal military participation in civilian policing apply differently here. There are duty status workarounds, Title 32, etc., and statutory exceptions that the administration can invoke. That explains why the president can put soldiers in D.C. on relatively short notice in ways he couldn't in most states without cooperation. But can isn't the same as may use them to ignore constitutional rights. use of troops for policing still faces statutory and constitutional limits and will produce litigation fast. On the homeless promise, the legal landscape shifted recently. A conservative Supreme Court decision last year makes it easier for governments to sanction some forms of encampment conduct. The Ninth Circuit's Martin v. Boise protection was narrowed by the High Court's later ruling. That said, removal of people, especially without housing alternatives, without due process, or in ways that discriminate against protected groups or people with disabilities, remains legally fraught. ADA claims, due process claims, state constitutional claims, and other civil rights arguments remain viable. And even if local governments can fine or remove encampments in some circumstances, the federal government can only directly clear federal property. Banishment from the city as a policy is legally dubious. Who benefits most, practically and politically? Trump and his base. This is classic political theater. Tough on crime, take back the city, messaging that rallies his voters and donors, gets 24/7 headlines, and forces opponents into defensive posture. Police unions and federal law enforcement constituencies who want more resources and a muscular approach will also welcome the move. Conservative media and GOP operatives get a vivid talking point that plays well nationally. That is the short-term payoff. Visibility, fundraising, enthusiasm. Opponents' likely legal paperwork and press conferences are predictable and politically useful to them too. So it's a zero-sum spectacle. Reporting and many local leaders, including DC's mayor and attorney general, are calling the move unlawful and preparing legal action. Where it could land him in hot water, the real risks and realistic odds. Immediate criminal exposure for the president personally. Extremely low while he's in office. Legal doctrine, OLC memorandum, Supreme Court precedent on presidential immunity for official acts, makes criminal indictment of a sitting president highly fraught and, practically speaking, unlikely in the short term. That doesn't mean future prosecutions are impossible once he's out of office, but immediate criminal arrest, charge prosecution, is not a realistic near-term outcome. Civil and institutional legal risk, very high. Expect prompt lawsuits from the district, civil rights groups, and individual plaintiffs seeking injunctions. Courts can and often do enjoin executive actions that exceed statutory authority or violate constitutional rights. The Home Rule Act's vagueness about emergency could be litigated quickly. Courts are more willing to hear suits against agencies and secretaries than against the president directly, and injunctions can blunt operations fast. There are already trackers and preparations for litigation. Political and reputational risk, real and unstable. Short-term gains with the base. Medium-term damage with suburban moderates and governance institutions if any abuse or civil liberties overreach occurs. If enforcement is heavy-handed, that could produce images and testimony that bleed into political harms, protests, congressional investigations, and state cooperation refusals. Long-term legal exposure. Conditional but meaningful. If a paper trail or credible evidence emerges that the president ordered or knowingly authorized specific unlawful acts, illegal detention, sanctioned violence, purposeful discriminatory eviction, that could become the basis for later criminal or civil charges once presidential immunity or OLC barriers no longer protect him. In other words, the immediate shield is strong. The future risk is real if explicit illegal orders are proven. Recent other deployments have already generated courtroom fights that illustrate the path. This is a political power play wrapped in legal language. It boosts Trump's headlines and base support while putting opponents on defense. Legally, the move isn't baseless. Section 740 offers a narrow tool. D.C.'s National Guard gives operational control, and recent Supreme Court rulings ease some enforcement. But these don't override constitutional limits or prevent swift lawsuits. The short-term outcome is likely litigation, injunctions, and political uproar, not immediate criminal action. If the administration stays within legal bounds, e.g., protecting federal property, it may hold. If it veers into mass removals or unconstitutional actions, the political and legal fallout could be severe. So, is this the beginning of a cleaner, safer capital? Or a dangerous precedent that could reshape America's cities forever? Drop your thoughts in the comments, especially if you're in DC right now. I read them all. And don't forget to subscribe.